Welcome back to Pass the Balance Sheet. Today we're talking about ethics in business, not as a legal checklist, but as a true leadership issue. Because doing the right thing is easy to talk about when everything is going well. The real test comes when money is tight, pressure is high, egos are involved, growth is accelerating, or survival feels like it is on the line. A business can be profitable and still be unhealthy if it is built on poor choices. And ethical companies are not created by one grand mission statement hanging on a wall. They are built through repeated decisions, the quiet ones, the hard ones, and the ones no one may ever see. So today we're going to look at what ethical leadership really means, why it matters, and how the choices leaders make shape the health, trust, and long term future of a business. Let's dig in.
Greetings, my friend.
Greetings.
It's good to see you again. And
Yeah.
I am, I guess, I don't know if excited is the right word for this topic, but I was inspired for today's topic in my reflection of our last discussion and kind of feeling weird about kind of exposing some of the basically the fraud that I experienced in one of my prior lives, and then I talked about a very toxic founder that I have had as a client, and I've been just kind of reflecting on the comments and making kind of being paranoid that I'm talking trash, but really wanted to the reason I brought them up and I guess I want to expand on this more. I think this is the special part about our candid conversations is that we don't shy away from the very real uncomfortable things that happen in jobs every day. And if we can't talk about it, then nobody else will talk about it. We have to address them, that they happen, and hopefully guide our audiences in how to navigate them, because they appear in different shapes and sizes, and different ways that people experience them. But I do want to prepare our audiences for how to deal with them, and kind of to hear some crazy stories from from our past, to kind of
Mhm.
put a real element to it. So I'm excited about kind of being candid more in some of the uncomfortable things that we have seen throughout our business careers.
Yeah, I say it every time. I'm excited for the topic. I am excited to get into like the one of the things that we talked about when we started this podcast was really peeling back the curtain and talking about the things that no one talks about. But we've all both of us have worked in multiple businesses. We've worked with numerous leaders. I mean, I'm working with upwards of 36 companies right now. And, you know, while they're all so different in, services that they have and their culture, because your culture is built on the people and the leaders that you have, there's a level of sameness or similarity in all of them. And one toxic person, one unethical decision, one questionable choice changes a
Uh,
company so drastically
yeah.
that and I've seen it again like numerous times how one
Mhm.
one cascading decision makes an impact and and so these are the things that I hope that our listeners can come to the table and say, I hear what they're saying. This is what I'm experiencing and have a level of normalcy, but
Mhm.
also have that solution to get out of it or the tools to resolve it quicker than maybe we were able to or we saw.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you're so right in the comment of, like one small thing can unravel so much in a company, in a culture. And ethics is a very it's an interesting kind of topic, because it doesn't show up in obvious ways.
Mhm.
It can be very silent, but deadly for
Mhm.
many years, until it starts showing until it starts being addressed, I guess. So some of the way I want to kind of illustrate some of the ways that ethics show up in a company, and really kind of stems from you really start seeing companies really where they stand, their morals and their ethical ground, really when pressure hits, right? So
Mhm.
ethics shows up in decisions about money,
Yep.
people, customers, vendors. Reporting is a big one.
Mhm.
Safety is another big one. Taxes, contracts, promises, just transparency in general. So it's not always like, did we break the law? Something
Mhm.
like it can show up in different ways. And I want to explore all of those topics in this conversation.
Yeah, I'm super excited. You created our roadmap today, so you probably have something to get in here. But the one area that I have seen this more often than not, yes, we see it in all of these things, and I am excited to talk about these, but the people side of it. And you and I
Mhm.
have talked so frequently about how people are so important. They're your biggest asset. You really have to steward them. I had a boss years ago, years. I mean, this was well before I really started climbing the ladder. And I remember one of their comments about I would say that the employee was they ended up leaving the company not on good terms.
Mhm.
It was a failure. I think failure is one of those interesting things because it is not one-sided. If an employee fails, there's a level of responsibility um, on the employer. What could you have done? Did you give them the right resources to succeed? Uh, an, a gamut of things, and they ended up not working out. um, and there was a comment that was made that this is the best opportunity that they'll ever have. And they're never going to have a better opportunity. And I remember hearing that employee brought back up in a conversation later, like well beyond when they left. Like they had clearly did some digging on LinkedIn or whatever about how that employee still wasn't doing something that I guess this superior deemed better or
Mhm. Mhm.
successful. And the comment came back up. I remember when the comment came out first that I was so taken aback um uh, by almost the just I don't know, disingenuousness of wanting them to succeed, whether it was with us
Mhm.
or not. It was just like so
Mhm.
negative from the jump. And then the fact that they came back to it like down
Mhm.
the road. And the sad thing is that comment was not I was not the only one that heard that comment.
Mhm.
The problem with it was not necessarily that I mean my personal values and moral, the comment was not right. But
Mhm.
the bigger problem was that other employees, current employees in the company had now heard this
Mhm.
person talking about a former employee in this manner.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it immediately changed the culture within. And
Mhm.
that small comment
Mhm.
caused some very questionable decisions throughout the company in like
Mhm.
the way people would move and like, well, if I get let go, it doesn't matter. Like this is the best I'll ever have. Like those were the kind of comments that were coming out. Like they were justifying almost poor behavior or poor decisions on
Mhm.
this comment. And so we wanted to get juicy. Um, but as a leader,
Mhm.
I couldn't understand not wanting someone to succeed, whether it was there within the company or outside of the company.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have been present during too many like executive conversations in my life where, the the other execs, feel I guess too comfortable to say
Mhm.
certain things around me because I have this anecdote reminded me of this was many years ago, but very toxic place in general, and the toxicity came from up above.
Mhm.
And the way that employees were talked about behind the scenes in these executive calls, in these executive meetings, was embarrassing. Like, I was like, "What am I doing with these people?" Like, I don't want any part of this. And it was really a favor for a friend of mine who was like, "Hey, this company needs to be saved. What can you do?" I
Mhm.
saw it for the objective at hand, and then I was in the middle of fixing it, and so I couldn't just walk away yet. But I was like, as soon as I'm done with this thing, I'm walking away, because it means a lot to me. I mean, you and I cover appreciation for your employees as often as we can talk about it. And
Mhm.
when I hear kind of alternative ways of how employers may really feel about their employees. Another example was, again, in the construction world, where a lot of things were offered,
Mhm.
freely in my
Yeah.
presence. But comments about, like, timing people's doctor's appointments because they fell over an hour with the driving time and things like that. And the comment would be like, "You don't see these people, willingly driving on the weekend to do extra work, and here they are, like, eating up, extra minutes." And it's just such a sign of unhealthy, just an
Mhm.
unhealthy relationship to begin with. If you are if you're counting the minute, you obviously don't feel like you're getting enough from your employees, but not doing anything to address it, and so you're just kind of a bully about it. I really don't like that combative relationship between founders, employers who need the resources, but they don't respect them enough, behind the scenes, or maybe even how they treat them to their face. Like,
Mhm.
there isn't that respect of, like, you're actually helping me manifest my dream.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, I agree. I've heard too many of those, and it's unfortunate.
But to your point of like being unethical or making those unethical decisions, like you said, like when you have like the situation in construction, when they're questioning, like, do you actually watch your time like this closely on the weekends? That disassociates the employee, and then when they are there, they're making, again, questionable decisions on like, well, how do I leave at 5 o'clock and have already been gone, or how do I clock out on my phone,
Hmm.
or like, I think that this is just a huge thing. And like, I'm a firm believer that, like you said, that these types of things start on stressors or
Hmm. Pressures of a
pressure.
company. Uh-huh.
um but that pressure also comes from how you're treated. Like if you treat
Yeah.
your employees poorly, then they make questionable decisions and
Hmm.
they start figuring out, like, how do I work the system uh to give as little as possible or do as little as possible or cut the corners so that I can meet this unrealistic goal.
Absolutely.
I don't think poor decisions just come out of thin air. Like we've talked about, they come out of pressure, they come out of stresses, they come out of um yeah, I mean, I would say pressure. And like we said, it could be toxicity in comments and how you treat them. When it comes to employees, we've talked about a lot of things, but burnout, if you ignore
Hmm.
when your team is burnt out. I have a teammate through um they're not my teammate, they're a part of the company that I work for, and she works way more hours than she should ever work. You can visibly see that she's burnt out. She
Hmm.
won't check out because she is so loyal to the company and to her work, and she's so invested in her reputation
Hmm.
that she won't allow it to get any further. But you can start to see animosity in little things,
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
the employee that, and I used to be this person, but that employee that is willing to work, um willing to check emails on vacation or willing to be there in exchange for being treated right. Like at
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
beginning of my career, it was, I'm going to check emails that it was never expected, it was always
Mhm.
appreciated. And as time went on, it almost became an expectation of,
Yep.
you know, work life balance is not a thing. Actually, it really
Mhm.
is. And
Mhm.
you get so jaded when you're in it that that it becomes a reality. And so on the employee side, toxicity, uh underpaying. And I want to be very careful with this one because underpaying is not just monetary, right? Like we can look at what you pay them
Mhm.
in salary, but you can also look at uh, benefits. Are you giving them appropriate time off? Are you giving them access to health insurance? Are you giving them access to 401k and retirement benefits? Um, there's so much that can be said about underpaying. And if you talk
Mhm.
to most employees, at least the conversations I've had with employees over my tenure, they're not always concerned about top line. Yes, they need to be able to pay their mortgage. Yes, they need to buy groceries, but they also appreciate having access to time off and health
Mhm.
insurance and
Mhm.
all of those things. And so we could go on and on, but I think how you treat your employees really is a tipping point into some of these unethical or bigger issues. But uh, kind of transitioning over more to the finance side, if we look at AP and AR, do you have any examples of where you've seen these questionable or unethical decisions when it comes to customers and clients or vendors and partners?
Um, yes, I touched on this in one of our prior ones, where essentially there was fraud of various sorts happening, where it was personal items, personal family items,
Mhm.
vacations, home remodels. I won't get more specific because I don't want identifiers, but and so yes, it started impacting, the books, and what
Mhm.
the way that it was tried to be covered up is putting these expenses in uh, leasehold improvements. So place in a balance sheet where the owner was hoping I wouldn't look. But as I mentioned in the past, I was all about reconciling everything on our balance sheet, including the all of the assets,
Mhm.
intangibles and tangibles, everything. And so for me, I caught it, and I was in a very, very difficult position in my life. So this was in my early career, and I was in a place that was like, first of all, I was trying to kind of, you know, I was growing as I think this is my, or I again don't want to give identifiers. So, but I was still growing as a person, and I was
Mhm.
like terrified of. I had two bosses. I was terrified of one of them, and just kind of like just a small kid in a big
Mhm.
like supermarket or something, like just
Mhm.
super terrified. And I was nervous about bringing these things up because, like, whom do I bring them up to? Like, there are two head people who one of them is involved and he is screwing the other person. I don't know if the other person knows. I tried to bring it up to one of them, and not even the full story, but this was like even a minor thing about when the other person left for uh, vacation, an annual vacation, and grabbed like the last cash that I was using for
Mhm.
that week's payables. And I've mentioned this in past stories where this was the place where I had to decide, like, who's going to get paid this week, because we
Mhm.
were we were like 6 years not profitable, and so like the company is going to shit, and the and certain people are taking skimming some off on the side.
Mhm.
And to me it's like, it's an embarrassment because, like, I know why this is happening, I know why we're in this
Mhm.
position. And at that point in my life, I did not have the guts to bring it to to the outside of that
Mhm.
organization. But I will talk about what happened in the end during that time. And this, I feel like this is where a lot of unethical things that do happen in organizations, the reason why they happen so long is because people, do not feel comfortable to bring them up. And in certain instances and in certain economic conditions, and I was there at this point, like I was so terrified of losing my job, and I was already like several years into it.
Mhm.
Like I once you're like in there, and we all called it the quicksand because we hated working at that place, but none of us could leave. Like we're like almost there. We're
Yeah.
seeing somebody leave, and like, oh, I wish I could be on the other side, but never gathering the guts to actually leave ourselves.
Mhm.
And so I made my move when I left the organization. I did report what I saw under my watch, but I have to speak to the honesty of the pressures of like if you're in that position and like you see it and you know that the moment you report it you're going to be gone.
Mhm.
It's a tough call, and I would, now that I'm older and wiser. I am older, but but I would definitely not do certain things. Like, yes, certain jobs are not worth it. I have walked away from, even very appealing opportunities when they were not ethically sound with me. So I'm a much stronger person now, but I so empathize with those who do witness it, and maybe even in not directly as I did,
Mhm.
but like don't know where to turn, don't know whom to report to because they might not know like, well, who's in on the plan, you know?
Exactly. Not only
Yeah.
that, but there's like rules and like legislature around, I mean, we call it whistleblowers. Like there's protection
Mhm.
around whistleblowers, but are you really protected? And I think that's where a lot of mindset goes. Like if I blow the whistle, yes, I'm protected. Mostly in public companies, but there is a level of it in smaller private companies. But are you really protected? You're probably going to lose your job. And if
Mhm.
not, they're going to make it so miserable for you that you end up leaving.
Mhm.
And like you said, you don't know who's involved. On like a customer client, I have so again, like when we talk about all of this stuff happening like under pressure when you're trying to meet metrics on the customer side, one thing that I see across the board is business owners or business leaders not knowing when to say no, right? They
Mhm.
just want the
Mhm.
revenue. They just want to see the revenue. They want it at a high level, but they don't think about the cost of that. And so they
Mhm.
think, I'm just going to take on this brand new customer. They're well known, or I have a client in the construction world that is taking on a new client, and very large. I mean, it's a national brand that they're taking on, and it's a big shiny object, right? They can pay their bill, but they probably are going to be like net 60 plus. And when you start to dig into the meat and potatoes of it, probably not as profitable as one would think, or in line with their ethos of what a ideal client would look like. And this mindset that I see so frequently in, again, so many business leaders is we're just going to get the client, get them on the books, get them
Mhm.
producing revenue, and then we'll back into the margins. Meaning,
Mhm.
we're going to take them on at, for easy math, $100,000. That's top line revenue. Our goal, let's say it's 30%. So of that 100,000, we're expecting to profit $30,000. And say our goal margin is 40%. Basically, what these leaders say is we're going to take on this client, and over the course of a year, over the course of the next four projects, we're going to back into it. And so they will sell something for way more than it needs to be sold for, or to make up for it. The
Mhm.
problem with this line of thinking is unless you're in a contract, you can't guarantee that they're gonna reproduce.
Mhm.
And if you're in a contract, you likely are in a contract for a certain cost. So you
Mhm.
can't change the cost on the next purchase. And there's a level of if you work in a space of like value adds where maybe you own the IP to what it is you do, then you have a little bit more of a sticky margin. But so much of what many people do is a commodity. And so if you start to back into a margin afterwards, uh, you have competition out there waiting to scoop up
Mhm.
whatever it is that's available. And it just like on a high level, it's kind of to me, it feels very bait and switch. There is a time to back
Mhm.
into margins, but it kind of feels like, hey, let's be friends, but we're not
Mhm.
going to be close friends, more like acquaintances.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it kind of changes the rules of engagement. And so to me, it feels kind of dirty.
Yeah. Well, I want to, you touched on something that sparks another idea that is a very big part of ethics as well, that I think both you and I have seen in our professional careers where, we understand that founders, owners, presidents, whatever, um, they have a lot of pressure in the community. Once they started a
Mhm.
business, their friends are now, trying to get opportunities. Like everybody around them is now like, oh, okay, this is some sort of opportunity for us. And so what I've seen a lot is like, during the Thursday golf day. I don't know if it's always been like a Thursday for my prior bosses, like as golf day. But like during golf, like that's when they get approached by all of their buddies, and what I see is, the friends of the owners are like, "Hey, I have this product. It's going to be, great. You're going to see so much return from it." And they kind of do their little elevator pitch on the golf course.
Mhm.
And because they're friends, like the owners are like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, great. Like we'll sign you up. Great. Just work with my team." And um I I I think a big part of ethics is not doing what's going to serve you personally,
Mhm.
but is this the right move for the business? And many times
Yeah.
when these relationships were then pushed onto me to onboard, I actually ended up saying, I'm sorry, like this contract is void because I did not sign it and you do not have anything to bring to the table right now.
Yeah.
So, and I don't mind being the bad guy. I have told owners before, like, hey, just don't make any decisions without me. Let me be the bad guy. I'll reject them, but please tell them like this has to go through my CFO. And that is the respectful thing. And you and I touched on it before.
Mhm.
Whether you're bringing on new employees to a team, whether you're bringing on new contracts, like your company has to assess them for what value they bring and if they can jive in your existing culture and if they are going to push the goals forward or not. So I think
Mhm.
neglecting that for personal gain, and that's where I see it a lot, is like, oh, well, it's not really like he's getting his there are always like weird trades always that I
Mhm.
saw happening, like, oh, well, he rubbed my back in this way, I'm gonna rub him his in that way. And it's like, well, that's your personal deal. You can do
Mhm.
that with your personal toys, but not with,
Yeah.
company assets here. Mhm.
Yeah. I have a perfect segue into like vendors and partners. So when it comes to like and this is our own business, so I can be a little
Mhm.
bit more um detail oriented in this. So we own a it's called an ADOS company. So I actually don't know what the acronym for it is, but basically we work with collision centers. After you get into a car accident, they repair
Mhm.
your car, put it back together the way it's supposed to be, factory specs. And now all of our cars have all of these cameras. So your backup camera, your like lane assist camera, your like radar camera. We do the calibrations on those. Most dealerships either don't have all of the equipment to do it or it's just time consuming, they would rather outsource it. So we have a business going around to the dealerships doing this. In the auto world, everything is by and large, uh, ADOS is kind of new, so they're still kind of figuring it out. But by and large, everything is done on flat rate. And so if you go to a dealership or, sorry, a collision center because you rear ended someone, like you have some bumper issue, uh, there's a rate on that vehicle. Basically, the insurance company says this on average takes 2 hours to repair, and they pay out 2 hours. If the tech does it in an hour, they still get paid for 2 hours. And so efficiency matters and you get
Mhm.
rewarded for that.
Mhm.
But on our side, we're third party. So we would come in, we would do the work, we would then invoice uh Collision Center Inc. And the insurance company then basically when you wrap up the job, you send this packet of work to the insurance company, say, this is what we did, this is what we billed for. Sometimes you have to outsource things, such as maybe you don't have a paint booth, you have to take the car to get painted or calibrations. So what happens is you then send this packet to the insurance company and then you get paid. The collision center then gets paid.
Mhm.
But these dealerships, so like say you have, I don't know, State Farm insurance. State Farm is contracted with certain collision centers. So if you get in an
Mhm.
accident, you call your insurance company, where should I take my car? They're going to tell you to go to XYZ, whoever they're contracted with, because it's going to be
Mhm.
cheaper for that insurance company.
Mhm.
And so my husband is totally not a finance person. Like he totally understands the car side of things, totally understands the insurance and invoicing side of things, how you have to play the game, all of that. But in the auto industry, there is this thing, they call it double billing. And basically what happens is you bill, I'm going to totally butcher this because when he told me this, I said, absolutely not, we're not doing this. But basically, what happens is the ADOS company, would bill the collision center, say $500. They take that invoice and send it off with their packet to get
Mhm.
paid $500.
Mhm.
And then on the back end, they void that $500 invoice and then we rebill them, say $300. We're still
Mhm.
making $300 because it's just our time. Uh, but what happens is now the collision center is making $200 instead of just getting reimbursed for that work.
Mhm. Mhm.
So when my husband brought this to me, he said, "Hey, we're losing some business with this shop over here because this other ADOS guy is doing this double billing."
Mhm.
And so I said, "We are not doing that. Absolutely not. Because if you get into a lawsuit with, say, State Farm, we will not win. State
Mhm.
Farm has all the leverage, internal lawyers, yada, yada, yada. Over what? Say we do 10 invoices a month at $200. The the collision center's making that $200. We don't get anything.
Mhm.
We're making the 300 and we're now getting sued for fraud because
Mhm.
we were complicit in creating these fraudulent invoices.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so when we talk about unethical decisions, these things are happening in an industry that is close to home to us over just a little bit more profit.
Mhm. Right. You this story reminded me of just some of the horrors that I have heard about when working in the medical industry. We had a biller who was um really fighting the insurance companies on a daily basis, and I don't want to like make myself a target to these insurance companies, but they're all corrupt. They because she had people on the inside of these companies, and I love this girl. Like she would, the business was very lucky to have her on the billing side because she would read these corrupt insurance companies the codes and what they're
Mhm.
violating, you know, and so they knew not to mess with her. But basically, what I heard is it was in the mental health industry, and uh, it basically just when you even know like the daily rates that get charged for these
Mhm.
for treatment for the kids, but they're all centered around, they are shaped around what the insurance companies are paying, you know, you still have to win contracts to get certain rates, but you know, um, insurance companies, some of them are willing to pay like a hefty daily uh, amount for a kid to be in treatment. But everything falls on like the need to be there and the proving
Mhm.
that it's like life and death for them to get treatment. And one of the insurance companies so corrupt, and they only give like 2 weeks max. It doesn't matter if you're like actually slitting your wrists the next day, like they do not care, they will stop treatment after the 2 weeks expire. But so there's this front end of the corruption, but then there's the billing side that my friend was telling me about, that basically, you know, these companies, these insurance companies, they have their own, you know, bottom line for their investors that they have to achieve. And so in order to do that, they have to meet their quarterly performance, or they would like to meet their quarterly performance promises to their investors. And
Mhm.
so they would essentially fraudulently reject a bunch of claims that should have been accepted, but they would just mass, you know, after a certain date or after a certain time that they're like don't want to be dipping into their profits, they're just rejecting a bunch of claims. And unless you are you have somebody like I did on my team who
Mhm.
knows their shit, she's, you know, quoting the rules back to them, they're really counting on these people. Like they don't have the bandwidth to argue with us. They're
Mhm.
all just gonna, oh, we didn't get approved for this, they'll write it off and continue, you know. And so that yeah, that's an unfortunate part of this messing with the billings, and where actually the company is like totally a part of the fraud, you know.
Yeah.
These people who are telling my contact, like it's their bosses who are forcing them, like, no, you got to reject all of these down. That is some unethical business there, but I
Yeah,
want to be careful.
we should transition into financial reporting and where we see this, but that reminded me of a story just from this weekend. So we all know, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. My daughter broke her arm, and just freak accident. We were at the park. She was climbing a tree, fell from the tree, and the rest is history. And so we went to got it all taken care of. And today is June 8th. Today's June 8th. I got this letter on Friday. I got this letter on Friday or Saturday, dated May 19th. So, like, 2 weeks earlier, basically saying that, and we check our mail every single day. So it wasn't like sitting down there for 2 weeks. We check our mail every day, go down to get this letter. Basically, it says that our claim is on hold. We pay our insurance every single month. We
Hmm.
have very few claims. I mean, we have
Hmm.
paid way more into insurance than
Hmm.
we have taken out. And basically says that our claim is on hold um because they need, it's a personal injury, and they
Hmm.
need to make sure that there's not anyone that they can go back and sue. Like,
Hmm.
that is the mindset around our society, is not that a 7-year-old girl broke her arm, but before I
Hmm.
pay this claim, let me make sure that I can't go back and recoup some of my funds, as if I have not paid into this same insurance company
Mhm,
for the
mhm,
last 20 years to
mhm.
make up for you to just cover the x-rays and the casts that she needs. And basically it said, I had 35 days from the date that it was stamped, so May 19th, I had 35 days to fill it out, send it back, and have it back there, or they were going to deny the claim. I'm just like, this is the society that we live in, and like you said, we
Yeah.
see it in all of these places, like, how can we make a quick buck? How can we mitigate whatever loss? Sometimes you just have to take the loss because it's the right thing to do. But
Right. Right.
all that to say, we should transition into some unethical, questionable decisions around financial reporting. And, the first thing that comes to mind for me when it comes to financial reporting, I think that this is really um, where things get ethical. Questionable decisions get made in the finance department far often than they should, and I would say 98% of them are around pressure. And the
Mhm.
first thing that I see is the budget, which could lead to so many different things. If we're off
Mhm.
budget, then we adjust the budget, or if we're off budget, then we
Mhm.
reclassify things that really don't have business being reclassified. But
Mhm.
one thing I actually haven't dealt with it personally, but I think that we do need to talk about it because
Mhm.
unfortunately people in our industry do it. But
Mhm.
you used to, if you were moved into a financial role or a CFO role or a leadership role, you used to have to be able to do a credit check, right? Like they used to have to pull your
Oh.
credit to ensure
Uh-huh.
that you were eligible to be sitting or stewarding funds.
Mhm.
You are now you are no longer allowed to do that due to discrimination because
Mhm.
what I guess our government says or sees is just because you can't steward yourself or your finances personally doesn't mean that you can't do it professionally. I kind of disagree, and that's why we see so many of these poor choices is when
Mhm.
you have so much control in a department, or you have, you know, that type of freedom in a department, or access, if you will, you it, and it really starts small usually, right? Like, I can't pay my rent this month, and so who's going to notice in a $500,000 a month company if 5,000 just disappears? The
Mhm.
problem with that is that it happens and then it's like, "Oh, well, if I could get away with 5,000, maybe I can get away with 7,000. If I can get away."
Mhm.
And if you look at some of the biggest schemes in the financial, sector, I mean, Enron is one of the biggest ones that come to mind. It very much started like this. It started
Mhm.
with something so small, or it started with an off balance sheet transaction.
Mhm. Mhm. Um, one, I want to also transition into some other ways that lack of ethics can be represented. And again, it's like a very sneaky way, like because it's where I've seen it often is also like in conversations with either lenders or investors when people are kind of backed up. They're trying to, the lender is trying to understand why they're in the situation that they're in, and they are just telling these blatant lies about, like, well, yes, this is true, but then we're working on these opportunities, and then they kind of start doing this like uh, used car salesman pitch of, like,
Mhm.
how it's going to get better. And I
Yep.
remember, like, this is one of the my personality traits is like my body doesn't lie. If I am like quiet, but I am like disagreeing or something, like my body will scream that I'm in disagreement. And I didn't realize that this was happening one time, but I was a part of a conversation with the bank and this unethical company, and they were doing, this like, oh well, there are all these opportunities and here's how we're working on them. And I knew a different lie about those quote unquote opportunities. And I was just bewildered that, like, there was this blatant, like, just pulling shit out of your left pocket
Mhm.
and trying to make it stick. And I was just like, yeah, I guess I was like in stupor or something, like, where um I actually got in trouble afterwards because these guys came back to me and they're like, do you have something to say? Because we got a concerned follow up after this meeting from the banker that that you looked beyond uncomfortable in that meeting. And I was like, I was, because you were lying. Like I actually called it out because it was like such an easy opportunity to explain, like, yeah, I'm
Mhm.
very uncomfortable. Like, how could you have represented that when you know that that's not true? And then he tried to, do the same sales BS with me as well. But I didn't.
Well, I
I
think
knew it
this
was
is why
BS.
it's so important for we've talked about this so often. Dual controls are so important for this. And when it comes to investors and lending, lending is a little bit harder to like finagle your way through. I don't know many banks that are willing to take on risk. I mean, they have like a whole com- gamut of compliance, right? Like you
Mhm,
can meet with
mhm,
your banker and maybe bullshit your way through a banker, but then it goes to compliance.
mhm,
And unfortunately, nothing gets through compliance.
mhm,
Um, and so it's a little bit harder on the lending side. If you're doing maybe like a revolving line of credit, when they do their annual checks, yes, they'll take into account what's going on in the
mhm,
industry, what's in the pipeline. They will definitely take that into account. But again, banks aren't willing to take on risk. Investors are where you can
mhm,
see this more frequently happen. But
mhm,
for me, I and AJ and I have made quite a few investments over the last year, but if we're investing in something, we do our due diligence. We want to
mhm,
know what does your organization look like? What
mhm,
does your finance department look like? If it
mhm,
is one person, probably going to
mhm.
be really hard for me to invest. And I
Yep.
think that's where investors, that really good investors are they're doing this type of due diligence. They're not just jumping into bed with something. But there is something to be said about those stories. There's a time and a place for it because, coming from the food industry that went through COVID,
Mhm,
there was a lot of volatility that happened and it
mm,
ended up smoothing out. And there was a level of that volatility that was necessary to the story.
mhm,
Um, but to just completely like misrepresent the situation or the story, um, is is so irresponsible. And so if I could give any advice to investors or anyone considering investing in a business, it would be ask really good questions, and ask questions on like dual controls, who's
mhm,
signing the checks versus who's uh reconciling the checks. Where are these funds? If I infuse capital, where are they going?
mhm.
um and hold metrics around it, quarterly check-ins or monthly check-ins. And uh
Absolutely. You touched on a good one. Like, if you are an investor and you are, you have quarterly reports that get submitted to you, like, this is where, like, I would be very diligent in reading them and in asking intelligent questions about them,
Mhm,
specifically in how is the new narrative, how has it changed from when the investment was sold to you. So,
mhm,
typically, and I know there are different kinds of investments, but hopefully when you're getting into an investment, you have been given and you've reviewed some sort of a model of, like, this is what the investment will look like, here are the
mhm.
projections, like, and that becomes your baseline, because that is
Yep.
then what you're holding, whoever you're investing with, you're holding them accountable to, like, this is what the story that they promised. And so now every quarter you want to compare it to that baseline, and if it's drastically different, then I would ask those questions. And I would just be very weary about, like, just because I've seen it so much play out in different, I've witnessed so many, like, salesman kind of personalities of, like,
Mhm.
just, trying to paint a story like, yes, this is bad, but, like, let's shine light on this opportunity. It's just so repetitive to me that now, like, when I'm hearing about other opportunities to avoid the question about, like, well, why didn't we meet our goals? Like, I start then digging deeper. And so that's what I would recommend for our
Yeah,
listeners as well.
exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. Um, so I think this is something we definitely will come back to because ethics is so important across business, and we could branch this out into marketing to sales to operations. We on a very high level mentioned, uh, I've seen it on production lines where you overwork and injuries or something
Mhm.
happen
Mhm.
and you explain it away.
Mhm.
And so I think this is a topic we could definitely come back to and dig a little deeper into. But I think at a high level, some of the things, if you are an employee in a business or a leader in a business wondering, like, are there unethical things happening in my culture, or are there, what can I listen for confirming that things are happening? I think some very broad things, this is very generalized, doesn't mean something's going on, but very frequently in these situations we have heard things like everyone does it, or it's not technically illegal, or we'll fix it later. Uh, they
Or
will
don't put this in
never,
writing.
yeah, they'll never find out.
Mhm.
Um, we
I've
have to
heard
do
those.
this to survive. It's just temporary. Uh, One of my favorites, I think it's yours too, because you have it highlighted, but this is how we've always done it. I hate that saying, not only for unethical situations, but it also hinders growth. Just because you've always done it this way does not mean you should
Mhm.
continue to do it
Mhm.
this way.
Mhm. Yep.
Um, Cultural red flags, you should not be afraid to speak up. And if you're afraid to speak up, you're probably not in the right place for you. Doesn't necessarily mean you need to quote unquote blow the whistle, but it might be your sign to start looking for alternative options. Um, when bad news gets punished, I mean, I've seen this in almost every company that I have worked for. When you bring bad news or something to the table, someone or something gets punished.
Mhm.
Uh, when leaders only want positive reports, I actually don't work with clients like that. It's part of my ethos
Mhm.
because the the weak points, those are your growth opportunities. If you are not addressing the weak points, you'll
Mhm.
never grow out of where you're at. Like you said, documenting decisions, when you have an employer refusing to document something, there's a reason.
Yeah, right.
There is a reason for that.
And so, as we kind of conclude this topic, I wanted you touched on kind of good signals for our listeners of like, if you're hearing these
Mhm.
justifications, these are small or maybe not so small signs. These are red flags that might be basically, if you're witnessing that there's a different narrative in front of clients or anybody outside facing than it is internally, that is already something to question.
Mhm.
And to your point, does it mean an automatic like whistleblower decision? And so for me, like I want to talk through my journey. And, as I mentioned before, I was too young, too scared to lose the job, the opportunity. It was really only when I was, fed up and kind of was ready to grow in a different place that I decided to kind of speak up. I remember when I was still working at that place, I mean, workers knew that it was an unethical place. The accountants before me, were a lot more vocal to the company about what they have seen,
Mhm.
and so I would constantly I remember this one guy was like, "Sassy, if you report them to the IRS, you get a cut of the findings." And I was like, "I can't do that. I can't do that because what this might mean is that like 40 plus people will lose their jobs because it is that bad. Like
Mhm.
this place will be shut down overnight."
Yep.
And so I could not I just I couldn't do that. But when I left, it was weighing very heavy on me. Like I know something about this company that is has heard it for the past many years, and it will it's going to continue going down that way. And I met with the bank and I reported everything that I knew and confirmed some of their suspicions that they have had and were not
Mhm.
able to confirm because they didn't have anybody on the inside. And so, luckily, it didn't uh, fall apart overnight. They were actually kind of justice was served in a different way, but I don't
Mhm.
want to give them out. But I guess in my life, at a certain point, when I see these things, like I have grown to address them when I see something that is not jiving with my personal ethics code. I will be vocal about it, even if it's losing a job. And I have walked away from like where certain things where leadership was complicit in there being unethical things as part of the organization. And so, but it took me years of gaining that confidence and kind of realizing like, no, unethical people are not worth my time. And I realized that it's not that easy for everybody. Not everybody has like this, option to just walk away, from the unethical, and they might see you represented in a different way.
I think what you're saying is super, super important and true. And while you were talking, one thing that I thought is if you are, because I see this too, I have a client right now that had a situation where they had someone in the finance seat, they were W-2, made some really poor decisions, just
Mhm,
really poor decisions. The owner was not involved with the company. I mean, he was involved in the company, but not involved in like real decision making. So there was not dual
mhm,
controls in place.
mhm,
This finance person really had free reins to do whatever they want. And it ultimately came down to a lending issue, right? Like
mhm,
the owner was trying to get a loan on something. Uh, and when all was said and done, the loan got denied due to
mhm,
a gamut of things. But when the owner started digging in, this person basically like jumped ship and they
mhm,
had a loan already with the bank. And so they brought me in. We have now put in dual controls. I would say like the cash flow situation is not much different since when I came. We're doing a lot of cleanup, but the cash position hasn't really changed in the last
mhm,
90 days, but we have painted the story. We have explained the situation. We've explained the changes to the bank.
mhm, mhm,
And with that, they were able to secure funding. And so I would say,
mhm,
even for leaders, if you feel like you're being abused, because it happens too on the other side. We've talked a lot about leaders and higher ups making poor choices,
mhm,
but
mhm,
when leaders aren't aware of some of the poor choices that are being made, you can get out of them and you can move forward by creating that story and making the change. And so,
mhm,
very simply going to the bank and just saying, we found that this person was abusing his power, her power
mhm,
in the company, and we now have a third party doing it. Here are the controls that we've put in place.
mhm,
And with that story, they were able to secure that funding. And so,
mhm.
um, I think what you said is so important, that it can happen anywhere within a company, and it's not the end all be all.
Absolutely. We're about ready to land that plane. I did not think of a little question for us.
This is a really simple one, but I'm sure we'll
Okay.
figure out a way to really drag it out. What is your favorite color? Just very simple. Favorite color.
Black.
Black? That's a shade. That's a
White.
shade, not a color. That's also
White.
a shade.
Black and white. That's it. How about you?
uh, if it's apparel, black or white, but probably green.
Okay. Mhm.
Probably green.
Tell me why.
I don't know. I think much like you, like I am very much I'm very neutral. Like if you ever walk into my
Mhm.
house, like everything is truly black, white, and gray.
Mhm.
Very, very neutral.
Mhm.
Um, but I just have always liked green. Like green was one of our wedding colors.
Oh, nice.
I feel like it's kind of timeless. Not like a neon, like a like a forest
Like
green.
a puke green?
Puke
I'm just kidding.
like, no, I was thinking like my phone cover's green, like more of like a sage,
Army
like
green,
yeah, like
like
a
dark army green,
yeah, a
maybe?
darker green where
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
be a little bit
No, that's cool. Green has always wanted to be my favorite. Like the color has followed me my whole life, but I just wouldn't accept it. Like I've always gotten green everything. So I'm like, I think I should accept green as like my color, but but I don't know, just black and white. I
black and
think
white.
also to your point, like with apparel, I lean toward I mostly wear black. White is a change from black. I will do colors once in a while to like spruce things up, but I feel the most comfortable in black and white,
Same.
and I just with my husband and I just put like we see the duality in life
Mhm.
and just the whole like yin yang
Yeah.
concept, and just the chaos and the balance of the chaos. And at our house, like all of his stuff is black and my stuff is white, like when we have paired stuff. So
Yeah.
I just kind of lean into that.
I like it. I like it. Well, my
Mhm.
friends, I hope that you found something useful in this, and I hope that we gave you some good nuggets to reflect in your own business or departments or situations. And we will see you next time.
Thank you, team. Ethics is not a one time decision, it's a pattern. Small compromises become culture. Culture becomes reputation, and reputation becomes enterprise value. Doing the right thing protects more than your conscience, it protects the business. The business leaders do not wait for a crisis to define their values. They build their systems, teams, and habits that make ethical choices easier before the pressure hits. Because in the end, ethics is not just about avoiding the wrong decision. It's about building a business that is strong enough, trusted enough, and valuable enough to last. If this episode resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with anybody who can benefit from these discussions. Thank you for going past the balance sheet with us. Until next time.